It was a quiet Tuesday morning in the glass tower of Astor Industries, where success had a sound, the hum of printers, the echo of heels, and the constant ringing of ambition. But for Adrian Voss, the billionaire CEO known for his cold precision and untouchable demeanor, silence was his favorite noise. He didn't smile much, didn't talk much, and didn't forgive easily. People feared his presence more than they respected it. And yet, that morning, as sunlight spilled across his desk, a single phone call would shatter everything he thought he knew about control, success, and life itself. The screen flashed an unknown number. He almost ignored it until the voice on the other end trembled with urgency. "Mr. Voss, this is Mercy General Hospital. We have a patient here, a woman named Sophie Hale. You're listed as her emergency contact. She's in the ICU, and you're her only hope." In that instant, his heart froze. The name hit him like a ghost from the past. Sophie, the intern he'd fired 3 years ago. The woman who once looked at him like he was human when no one else dared to. And now she was fighting for her life, and somehow, he was the one they were calling backhand index pointing right. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that touch the heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal to help us spread hope through stories like this. Adrian stood there for a long time, staring out at the skyline he had built his empire over, trying to remember the last time he had thought of her. Sophie Hale, 27, bright, relentless, and too soft-hearted for the corporate jungle. She'd worked late nights, stood up for people he'd dismissed, and once even told him that wealth means nothing if it can't buy compassion. He had laughed at her back then, cold and condescending. But the day she accidentally exposed a mistake in a senior executive's report, he'd fired her, not because she was wrong, but because she embarrassed him in front of the board. That he remembered the way she had left, eyes full of disbelief and pain, whispering only one thing before the elevator doors closed: "One day, you'll understand what it feels like to lose something that truly matters." Now, as he sat in his car, racing through traffic to Mercy General, her words echoed through his mind. The world outside was drenched in daylight, blinding, harsh, almost unforgiving, but inside him, everything was dark. When he reached the hospital, he didn't enter as a billionaire. He entered as a man trying to remember how to care. The ICU smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. A nurse recognized his name and led him down a long corridor. "She suffered internal injuries from a car accident," the nurse explained gently. "No family came forward. Her condition is critical. She mentioned your name once before she lost consciousness." Adrian's steps faltered. He didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she remembered him, or that she had no one else to call. When he saw her lying there, pale and still, connected to wires and machines, something inside him broke. Sophie had always been full of color, her laughter, her stubbornness, her endless belief that even the cruelest people could change. And now, she looked like a fading memory. He sat beside her bed for hours, ignoring his phone, his meetings, and his reputation. Somewhere between the rhythmic beeping of the monitor and the quiet hum of the hospital, the truth began to dawn on him. He had spent his life chasing power, yet the only time he felt human was sitting next to a woman he'd wronged. As the hours turned to days, Adrian stayed. He covered her medical bills, ordered private specialists, and called in every favor he had. The nurses whispered about him, the billionaire who never smiled, now sleeping on a hospital chair, holding a woman's hand. He didn't care what they thought. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about redemption. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the window, Sophie stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, confused and weak. Why are you here?" she whispered, voice barely audible. Adrian's throat tightened. He had rehearsed what he would say 100 times, but all that came out was the truth. "Because I was wrong. And I don't want to be that man anymore." Tears filled her eyes, not from anger, but from something softer, the fragile understanding that maybe people can change. She turned her face toward him, exhaustion etched across her features. "You don't owe me anything, Adrian," she said. "You never did." "But I do," he replied quietly. "You were the only person who ever saw good in me when I didn't see it myself." Over the next few weeks, as Sophie began to heal, Adrian visited daily. He brought her books, flowers, and sometimes just silence. He learned things about her life he never cared to know before: how she had been working 2 jobs to support her younger brother through college, how she had volunteered at shelters on weekends, how she had once dreamed of starting her own foundation for underprivileged students. Her strength humbled him. Her kindness embarrassed him, and her forgiveness shattered him. As she recovered, word spread about what he had done, the billionaire boss who paid for a former employee's full recovery, not for publicity, but from guilt. But deep down, Adrian knew it wasn't just guilt. It was awakening. He began to change how he ran his company. He created a fund to support employees in crisis, increased healthcare benefits, and started mentoring young professionals personally. People said he'd gone soft. But for the first time in his life, Adrian Voss didn't care about the headlines. He cared about her. One afternoon, Sophie was discharged. The sunlight outside was warm and forgiving, unlike the blinding glare of his corporate world. He helped her into the car, and for a moment, their eyes met. The man who had everything but compassion, and the woman who had nothing but it. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked softly as they drove past the skyline. "You've already done more than enough." "Because I finally understand what matters," he said. "And it's not money or power. It's people like you." Sophie smiled faintly, looking out the window. "You always had a good heart, Adrian. You just built too many walls around it." Her words stayed with him for weeks after she moved out of the hospital. He found himself visiting community centers she used to volunteer at, funding scholarships in her name, and quietly joining her cause without making it about himself. The world began to see a different Adrian Voss, not the ruthless tycoon, but the man who finally remembered what it felt like to care. Months later, Sophie invited him to a small event at a local school, the launch of the Hale Foundation for Hope, dedicated to helping children from struggling families. As he stood there, watching her speak to a room full of smiling faces, he realized something profound: that the real wealth he'd gained wasn't measured in dollars, but in second chances. When she took the stage, she glanced at him, eyes shining with quiet gratitude. "Sometimes," she said to the audience, "life brings people back into your story not to hurt you again, but to heal what was once broken. And sometimes, even the coldest hearts can rediscover warmth when they finally listen." The crowd applauded, but Adrian barely heard it. All he saw was the woman who had taught him that compassion isn't weakness, it's strength. And for the first time, he smiled without hesitation. As they stood outside afterward, the golden daylight wrapping around them like forgiveness itself, Sophie looked at him and said, "You didn't just save me, Adrian. You saved yourself." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. The truth was already written across his face.